Okay, it's 5 o'clock. I'll call the special meeting of Monday, March 17th, 2025 to order. First item is an action item. It is to approve the consent agenda, which may include appointments, additional staff, replacement staff, contract increases, separations, resignations, contract decreases, terminations, leaves of absence, and retirements. Seeking a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion to approve as presented.
Seconded.
Okay, we have a first and a second. Any questions on that? All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I think we have a couple of our administrators here. Cale?
Yeah, I'd just like to recognize we have two people in the audience and one at home. Robert Graduleski from Horseman, Kurt Richard, and Katie Caldwell, all taking the next step in their leadership journey. I'd like to celebrate them and welcome them in the new positions. Thank you, guys.
Congratulations. Our next item is also an action item. At the March regular meeting, Julie Schell, Director of Elementary Education, and Kara Rakowski, 4K Principal and Early Childhood Coordinator, presented information pertaining to the 4K program and the move to have Hawthorne Hills 4K students attend 4K at the Lincoln Early Learning Center. This came recommended from the committee, which is all of us, but are there any additional questions?
No new news. Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No new news on that one. We just felt like it probably would take official action on it because it was part of the elementary task force.
Sure. So I'm seeking a motion then to approve Hawthorne Hills 4K students attending 4K at the Lincoln Early Learning Center.
So moved.
All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Next, we have another action item, which is regarding private school boundary changes. I will turn that over to Mr. Bushman.
This is pretty straightforward. It's statutorily, we need to approve it. We have both St. Peter's and Our Savior's private schools. Our Savior's is no longer going to exist after next year, so St. Peter's is taking over their boundaries. So we just need to approve both St. Peter's and Our Savior's have approved it already. We're just finalizing it with our vote.
I'm seeking a motion to approve the presented private school boundaries for St. Peter's Lutheran School for 2025, 2026, and going forward. Any questions from the board members? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
That's too fast. Motion carries. And that is the last action item for that meeting, so I'm seeking a motion to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. All right, it is 5:05, so I will call the Education Operations Committee meeting of March 17th, 2025 to order. First item is I'm seeking a motion to approve the minutes of February 24th, 2025. We have a first and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? That motion carries. Next item is not an action item, but EEA Principal Shannon Young will give a brief update on the exciting things happening at EEA.
Good afternoon. I also have Olivia Franklin with me. She's a senior at EEA. Okay, we'll make sure we share it appropriately. All right, so thank you. I feel like I was able to see you just a couple weeks ago and talking about WAVE, and now I get to talk about EEA tonight. The first thing that we want to highlight tonight, when I worked with the kids and said, you know, what are you proud of? What are the things you want to make sure that the board knows about what's going on at EEA? And the members that I sought out first were from our Student Lighthouse team. Our Student Lighthouse team has been such an incredible force in this school. They're definitely a decision-making body, and it's actually very fun as a staff now to really continue to hand over more and more responsibility to them. So when we have a problem or something we're trying to solve and trying to figure it out, it's quite often that we end up saying, what does the Student Lighthouse team think about this? And then we run some of that by them. They've worked on a lot of different pieces of information for us and maybe taken things and helped us refine, whether it's maybe some new rules or responsibilities or whatever it is. They've definitely been a great force in the building and just really helpful to make sure that we're really looking for all those opportunities where our students can lead what's happening in their school. So some of those members actually recently participated in some strategic planning with the staff and the EEA Governance Board. And, every time we broke into any sort of discussion, of course, everybody just wants to hear from the kids first, which I think is the way that it should be. Some of that work is shared on here, some small tweaks in our mission statement, but this is the current draft is EEA, a future-focused school providing a personalized education in a community where everyone is valued and empowered to achieve. And there's some slight wording changes from things we talked about before, but one of those changes is adding those words of future-focused and really thinking about how we can continue to see what are we preparing the kids for and how does what we're doing now need to look different to be able to do that. The next thing we wanted to highlight, our JAG Spotlight Day, we had that recently, and that's an event where our students take an opportunity. We invite all kinds of different folks to come in, and the students share their stories, and they share how JAG impacts them. Just to remind you, JAG is Jobs for America's Graduates. We became a JAG school a few years ago, and our governance board committed to hiring the local match that we need to have that position, and it's just been such a wonderful opportunity for the students. And so some of the things that JAG offers our students are listed on that slide there, and I know you had that in your packet and you can read it there, but just one thing that always stands out to me is over 80 competencies that students can master that help them prepare for life post-secondary. They also support students for 1 year post-secondary. So they continue to reach out and check on those graduates every month for an entire year after they graduate. Olivia's going to speak on the next slide.
Another thing too is that EEA is very relationship-focused school where we're so small that each student is able to have a strong community and fellowship with not only their peers but also teachers who can support us and to just empower us to become leaders and to be successful, always encouraging us and trying to do whatever they can to make sure that we can find success not only into our graduation but also after graduation. I know several of my peers who've even stayed connected with some people who have moved on into perhaps a different career, but still staying connected with people from EEA and just having that great support.
All right. Thank you, Olivia. I stole her quote, so when I was talking to her about what slide do you want to do, she was like, well, I probably should do that one. Like, that makes sense since it was your quote that was put in there. And finally, we've talked about some future directions, and we've always existed to provide service to students. As a charter school, the goal has never been hitting a certain number or things like that. It's always been based out of need, providing for a niche or a need in the district that was there to provide something different. And our strategic planning highlighted a couple areas that we're going to be focusing on a little bit more, exploring more, that future focus piece, as I mentioned. And then how can we be an asset for students struggling with attendance due to issues with anxiety or some of those physical illness type pieces? We're seeing that more and more students who are just really struggling to actually physically get into a building and how that's impacting. And we know that our peers and the other traditional brick and mortar schools are doing everything they can to encourage those students in and support those students. But we have a couple things that might make it a little easier for that to happen here. We get some of those students at EEA, but we want to make sure we're a bit more, I would say, focused in how we're planning on that whole process for them when they come in. So some of the things we have in our favor would be that smaller entrance, a little less anxiety provoking from what kids have told us. The individualized learning, there's some flexibility with gradually re-entering the building. The relationship focused, as Olivia mentioned, and one piece of it is it kind of requires that understanding that attendance is going to take a while to significantly improve. And that's something that we have to make sure we convey to the parents and the families that are coming in that way, that yes, we have processes we need to follow in terms of attendance, but we also recognize that when you're starting from not entering a building at all for, many, many days, that we might have to build that up more slowly. So some areas we want to delve into a little bit more. So thank you for the time. I hope we stayed within the 5 minutes. I'm not sure that we did. I know there's a lot of different things on the agenda. Are there any questions?
Any questions from board members? I don't think so.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job. Next, we have any public speakers? There are none. Okay, then we'll move on to an action item, the Wisconsin School Nutrition Purchasing Cooperative Agreement. The Wausau School District Nutrition Services Department currently belongs to the Wisconsin School Nutrition Purchasing Cooperative Group. The co-op is requesting member districts to present the co-op's resolution to the respective school boards for approval of continued membership for the 2025-2026 school year. Do we have any additional information to present on that? Yes?
Don't have anything additional to present. I'm just here to answer any questions that anybody might have regarding the cooperative.
Any questions from board members in staying in this cooperative? Obviously, we don't want to be out on our own doing this purchasing,
We do
so,
not.
okay.
Not at this time. No.
Then I am seeking a motion to recommend to the full Board of Education to continue membership in the Wisconsin School Nutrition Purchasing Cooperative by passing the presented resolution and agreeing to the 2025-26 66.0301 cooperative agreement. We have a first and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Next is not an action item, but it is a referendum update. I will turn that over to Mr. Bushman.
And I would call it maybe more of a referendum reminder. This will be our last board meeting before the referendum on April 1st. Just a reminder for everybody to make sure that they get out and vote. We've been doing informational sessions, two at the large high schools and multiple road shows. So April 1st referendum, make sure people get out.
Okay, thank you. Next item as well is informational, not an action item, but we will receive an update on red granite.
And I would welcome to the table both Heidi Kleinschmidt and Amanda Molin. Amanda, did I pronounce your last name correctly? Is it Molin? You did. Okay, thank you. And if you guys just want to hit the green button, or the button, it'll turn it light green, and you're good to go.
Okay. All right, well, thank you for having us tonight. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Heidi Kleinschmidt, and I'm the new Executive Director for Red Granite Charter School.
And I'm Amanda Molin. I've been part of the project for a while, but as of a few months ago, I'm now the chair of the governance board.
So this is just our vision. So our work is built, our work is to build a foundation for lifelong learning and integrity for our students. We seek to send into the world confident, curious, and independent thinkers who will lead a life of purpose, contribution, and direction. So I wanted to start off with a fancy picture that AI created me because Kayla and I both like it. So this is really a picture of what we are trying to create in the woods. Obviously, what we are building is not going to look exactly like this, but AI did a pretty darn good job. So I wanted to start you off with a beautiful picture to try to envision what it is that we're trying to create. So this is the actual site location of the school forest property. This is a visual of what it is that we initially started looking at that we would try to build on. So this is a 40-acre plot that is located in Mosinee. So this is off of Fawn Road. It's right across the street slightly from the trailer park that's located in Mosinee. I did share this with the town of Mosinee board, and some of the concerns that were brought at that meeting were some viability issues with Fawn Road. They did share a little bit of concerns that that's usually the last road that is plowed in winter months. However, they said they would be willing to work with us on that. But I just thought I would share a little update also of the town meeting. This is also another site that we looked at today. This is located, so some of the concerns, honestly, I think it was people were concerned in the community about the traffic that would be on Fawn Road because it's not a very busy road. And they suggested this section, which is also, it's connected, so it's kind of like an L shape. We did look at it today, and there is a section that is clear cut already because they did clear cut some trees last year. However, after discussing it, we would like to move forward with the Fawn Road location because it's a little bit further back. It's more secluded into the woods, and there's a little bit more privacy. So what we decided is more moving, because that road there, that Remington Road, there are houses that are located on that, and so that's some of the concern from the community members is that if we are too close, having a school in their backyard. So if we moved on that Fawn Road just a little bit more in the middle section area, we should have enough distance from the houses and give us our privacy that we're looking for also.
And just for orienting, so KK is the highway, the what you consider the main school of Forest is on the bottom side of KK, right there, yep. And so on the upper side there's four approximately 40-acre plots, so the red square is one. Above that would be a second, and then to the left where the cursor is right now, that's where the previous slide was at. That's the one that we were looking at, so.
So this is the direction that we are looking towards going towards. This is right off the Fawn Road. This is just an initial site plan because we did not actually get an engineer out there yet until we have more information. Or we had the discussion more or less of which section we wanted to move forward with. So this is just a rough outline. However, we are moving more to the north side where we can just, again, give some of those houses that are on Remington Road some distance so that we're at least far enough off. They won't even be able to see us, so that we're trying to not disrupt as many community members as possible. This is the building we're currently looking at to purchase potentially with grant funds if we are able to do so. This is a fourplex. It's actually already state permitted for the state of Wisconsin. There's another school that is located in Pulaski area that is utilizing this, and it will be available for us by June if we choose to move forward with this route. The beautiful thing about this building is it has the classrooms, it has an office space in there that we need, and it also has built-in bathrooms, so therefore we wouldn't have to build a separate bathroom structure. So it just makes things a little bit smoother and easier for us to be able to move in as soon as possible.
And if I could add on to that, Heidi, she had talked a little bit about the grant funding. So part of the restrictions is they're not able to lease using the grant funds. We know that for sure. In some cases, they can purchase. So this could potentially be a purchasable building with the idea that if, for some reason, the school doesn't work out, that building could be sold and removed as well, that would be a portable building.
So we are obviously in the phase one of the planning piece of things right now. We were able to get Red Granite board approval. We were able to obtain your guys' approval. I did do a presentation at the Mosinee Town Board. We are in the process of now getting our engineer out there as soon as possible to actually go and draw up very specific plans on that Fawn Road location. And then we will be working towards submitting all of the applications and the permits. That we're hoping to be able to get that to the town of Mosinee for their next board meeting, which would be next month. And then we have also started the process of fundraising because we know that you guys are not responsible for this project, that this falls on Red Granite, and we are working towards a fundraising project to raise funds to be able to sustain the project. From there, our initial plans are to clear some land. So when we went out there today, they did do some clear select cutting of some trees in that area. So there's a spot right in the middle with some trees already removed, which is helpful. So we plan to just do a small portion to get us out there initially. We will obviously have to level the ground. There's a lot of trees we're going to have to take out. And then we need to get the septic and well installed, proper plumbing, obviously, when we get the buildings on site, and work towards bringing electricity. So again, there was an electricity box out there, so some of these things will be feasible. And then we also will need to make sure we have a driveway that has the turnaround in the woods. Once we kind of get our site location down, we plan to hopefully be able to bring that fourplex that you guys saw to the property. We will be placing that on foundation, a concrete foundation on that to secure the building down. We do still have the yurts. I know that I don't want to bring up the trauma from the yurts, but if they can still be utilized for 3 seasons where it's not like a full season. We would have that fourplex would qualify as the main classrooms. These are more like storage spaces for us, so we could still utilize the yurts that we purchased. And then if initially we will need to get a bathroom facility, if this fourplex does not work, we would have to install a bathroom facility. We did talk about potentially utilizing a portable bathroom if we can't get that piece initially. And then obviously we need to move all of our pieces to that location. So this is just, again, the layout of what I went through. We are really just at the phase 1 piece where we're getting the engineer out there. Our goal for this year is for us to raise $200,000 just for us to be able to start the project and really get some of these things going. We do have some donated funds to get the engineer out there and potentially do some of the clearing of the land, and then we will continue to raise funds for the remaining pieces that we need. This is just another beautiful picture AI created. We will continue to grow, so each year, right now we serve up until 3rd grade. We will add a grade each year, so we will need more buildings. So we'll continue to fundraise because we will need to continue to add classrooms each year. Someday we would love to have solar installation for the efficiency of that, and additional bathrooms, and just making sure that our area and our school is beautiful as well. So again, how do we fund this? We have already met with community foundations in north central Wisconsin. We are working on really building our capital campaign so that we can really show people the vision of what we are trying to create. And we want to make sure we're getting in front of donors. There were a couple grants that we are able to apply for some small pieces, but we will need to do the majority of this will be fundraised. And just making sure that people are aware of what we're trying to bring to life, a beautiful school in the woods. And that's it. Is there any questions?
Questions from board members?
I just have more of a comment, and when this was first brought to the board, I was really excited about what it presented and the opportunities and the options, for kids learning in different ways and hopefully bringing new kids into the district. And then as time went on, yurts notwithstanding, I became less excited because things just seemed to be going in different directions. What you guys just presented here in 10 minutes has made me excited again. And I think that's because of your willingness to step up and step into leadership roles. You clearly have been thinking through this, pragmatic. You've done your research. I commend both of you. Thank you both for stepping up, and congrats on the work you've done. I have no doubt this is going to be successful.
Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you for giving us an update as well. Even though you're taking the lead on this, people still ask us questions like we're supposed to know what's going on. So it's nice to get that update, and maybe we can have this come back again in a couple months and see where we're at.
Yeah, and I think that's something that we will be doing. Just one caveat to that is, I think we've been very realistic about this is a fairly aggressive timeline, and so there's considerations that if we get to September or October and the project's not finished or some hurdle comes in the way, we've talked about what is the fallback plan on that one. So just for the board's awareness is that we met with Rib Mountain Elementary, their staff, the other day and talked about the possibility of, there's 4 classroom spaces in an office space that would be available for Red Granite. So we talked with the staff about that, and those are always sensitive discussions. And we also, just today, had sent out information to the families of Rib Mountain Elementary as well, and shared with them that we'll have an informational session in the next couple weeks after spring break where we bring in Red Granite, and there's some education about what the program is, and we can answer questions from families as well. But just want to let you guys know about that.
You know, I do have a few chainsaws. Maybe we could have a board workshop clearing some land.
Check with our insurance company on that one.
Nah, probably best not to.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
And our next item is an action item. It's a calendar update. Diana White will present proposed changes to the 2024-25 school calendar year due to a recent snow day in the district. And depending on how Wednesday goes, maybe we'll be back here again in a next meeting.
All right, thank you for having us. And yes, you bring up Wednesday. We're keeping an eye on that forecast, and we'll see what happens there. But wanted to bring an updated calendar before you first, and then get into discussions about how we best move forward. But as you are aware, in our calendars, we build in enough minutes to allow the district to have 3 snow days. And this year, Mother Nature has given us several snowstorms, and now we are at 4 snow days so far. So that is just an overview. And if we go to the next slide. Here are the options before us, because we do need to make up lost instructional time. As background, the Department of Public Instruction sets thresholds for instructional minutes. Those minutes are different across the level. So 4K has 1 set of minutes, K through 5, and then 6 through 12. So we are at a point where, from a district level, we do need to make up that 4th snow day. So we could do one of 2 things. One would be to add minutes to the day, and the other would be to add time at the end of the school year. Both obviously are not ideal, but what we're hoping to move forward with is adding time to the end of the school year. And here's what that would look like. So for June 5th, which was originally supposed to be the end of the school year, what we are proposing is that day become a full day of learning for all students in the district. That's 4K through grade 12. June 5th would be the last day for our 4K students as well as our elementary students. Then on June 6th, what we're proposing, again to meet the DPI's instructional minute threshold, would be a half day for secondary students only. This would be their last day for the school year, and at the elementary level, there would be no students, as their last day was on the 5th, and this day would become record keeping for elementary staff. And then by doing that, we would need to shift the last day for teachers to Monday, June 9th. So on the next slide, here is the motion, but before we move on, I'd answer any questions that you may have about that.
Board member questions?
I recall a few years ago we had the same issue, and I thought we added minutes.
Yeah, we had one, and I think that was the year that we had, and maybe it's been more than 1 year, but there was a year where we had like 7 days, and we were pushing up on not being able to finish before summer school. And we did some virtual, and we did some minute adding.
Okay.
So I think we've done both at different times.
And the adding the minutes is just not, like,
Usually not ideal, just because of transportation and co-curriculars, it just pushes everything back.
okay.
I think from an education standpoint, an actual day or half day of education is probably more beneficial than, shortening up some passing times and starting the day 5 minutes early or cutting into homeroom by 5 minutes. I know that accomplishes DPI requirements, but I don't know how much educationally you benefit from cutting short homeroom by 10 minutes or 5 minutes
I would
or whatever.
argue it's probably not much different than
The half day.
ceremonial half day at the end. But I get it. It's fine.
Any other questions? Okay. Okay, then I'm seeking a motion to recommend to the full board the approval to make Thursday, June 5th, a full day of learning for all Wausau School District students, and June 6th, a half day for secondary students only, making Monday, June 9th, the last day for teachers. A first and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and then fully recognizing that there's a very real possibility for more inclement weather on Wednesday, we wanted to bring a discussion before you about how you would like us to move forward. And if we go to the next slide, there should be one more. Really, would the board like us to pursue virtual learning going forward? What I do want to point out before I turn it over to John Uding, like I mentioned earlier, there are different thresholds by grade level. So really the issue lies within secondary and meeting the minutes. So we just would like to know whether or not virtual learning is a consideration going forward. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Uding.
Yeah, thank you, Diana. So what this might look like if we have another day coming up, and let's just say Wednesday, for example, if that's out there, what we would propose to do to make it up would be 4K students have a different minute threshold. They need some time, so they would have some at-home learning activities, non-tech based, and that's how Kara has done that successfully in the past. Our elementary students have enough instructional minutes, so it would be a snow day for elementary students with that. 6 through 12, and I'll come back to elementary staff. So 6 through 12, staff and students would be virtual learning. They are in need of minutes, and if we did not do virtual learning, there would be adding time on to the end of the year. They need minutes where elementary has enough minutes of instruction for that. Then we would come back down and elementary staff would engage in professional development on that day. So students would be off, and we would take the state-required Cox Campus training and literacy that would be done on April 21st, and we would get staff the ability to do it at home on our next snow day if we have one, and that would be their PD. There would be great benefit for us because then there's a May day too that they have to do some required training that we could bump back to April, and then that would give staff that May day back in their building to do packing and those kinds of things with some consolidation. So our plan right now would be to put before you at-home learning for 4K, snow day for students, PD for elementary staff, and 6-12 virtual learning for secondary students and staff.
And so we weren't noticed for action specifically for that, but you're kind of just looking for a discussion, and are we okay with it?
About
Feedback?
where you're at on that, if that sounds like a viable. It's a plan that potentially how things roll forward could be replicated a second time.
Because that could be done without official board action because we're not altering the school calendar.
Correct.
My understanding. Okay.
How
Comments,
are,
board members?
How are half-days accounted for, if we could make it a half-day on Wednesday? Is it purely minutes in a building,
Yes.
so you don't get any
It's changed
prorate?
days to minutes. We used to be able to count if we fed them lunch, remember those
Right.
days, and then we counted that day?
Right.
Now it's changed to overall instructional minutes, so we actually have to make up the minutes.
Well, I don't know, the feedback I've heard, as I'm sure everybody here has, virtual learning is, I don't know what the right word is for it, not necessarily valuable. I guess if we have to call it virtual learning to get away with the minutes, I just think we should temper expectations for staff and students, because I've heard parents, because you're going to get some parents who are going to want to do this right, and it's not going to work for whatever reason, no fault of ours or them, and it just, the frustration goes through the roof. So I guess that's my unofficial way of saying, sure, go virtual. My opinion would be to say virtual, just temper expectations accordingly.
I've heard the same, but I've heard it primarily for elementary. And so if the elementary students don't need it and the secondary students are the only ones doing virtual, I think it's not as good as being in the classroom, but I think it works a lot better for the secondary students than
And it
it
would
does
be
for elementary.
asynchronous. Yeah, asynchronous learning is what we would do, not the live instruction, but asynchronous. So
Yeah.
those 612 students have a little bit more knowledge and experience with Canvas, our learning management system, and, work from it every day. So they're just a little bit, their access and their usability with that platform is a lot more informed than it is for our little ones who have not done Google Meets or any of that asynchronous as of yet. So that's why it might be slightly easier lift for 612 kids than it is for the elementary.
And I think the virtual, although it's not ideal, is much better than tacking on days at the end, because the kids are done. And they might get something from a virtual day in the middle, of the year versus coming in at the end when the weather is nice and they don't want to be there anymore.
Any other? I agree. I think it makes sense, especially since it's secondary, and I don't think we want to push farther into that next week of June if we can avoid that.
That might be something we want to look at too, instead of getting to the point where we use up our snow days and are looking at tacking on days, to just go virtual instead of tacking on the days. Because there might be a smidge more education that goes on, actually.
It's good and bad. If we do virtual, then I hear complaints that people don't like virtual, and if we go too far into June, then I hear complaints that we went too far into June. So
can't win.
Yeah, I don't know. What's the best answer there?
I'll fall on the side of there might be a little more education going on, but not.
Just from a feedback standpoint, that sounds okay. A little more endorsing of virtual learning 6 through 12, a little more cautious when we're talking about our elementary age students.
That's the feedback I get. I just get the feedback that there isn't a lot of learning happening with the elementary students, because it's not like an online WAVE program that's set up for that. It's almost like emergency learning in a way, and it's just there just isn't as much getting accomplished as opposed to secondary, where they can hear a lecture, they can do an assignment, they can like you said, it's more asynchronous. It's not just let's try to get everybody at a Google Meet at a certain time and count the minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Our next item is not an action item, but Jenna Russo, our attorney with Renning, Lewis, and Lacey, will lead the board through a discussion on school building sales. Is she on?
Good afternoon. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. Would you like me to go ahead and get started with the general overview, or do you have an introduction that you'd like to do regarding the properties?
Jenna, we'll just have you jump in and give us the general overview.
Sounds great. Good evening, everyone. As they mentioned, my name is Jenna Russo. I'm a partner with Renning, Lewis, and Lacey, and would like to give a general overview tonight regarding school district real estate transactions. As you can likely see on your screen, we have an outline here. It's my understanding there are 3 properties that the school district may be looking to dispose of, and that there is a 4th one that the district is not looking to dispose of at this time. So the overview tonight will focus on the methods to sell school district property, and then it's my understanding at a later meeting we'll talk more details and things of that nature. So there are 3 methods to sell school district property, and these methods can be used. All of them could be used, or none of them could be used. You could start with one method, and if it doesn't work, switch to another. So first method, not in any particular order here, is to list a property with a real estate broker. There are advantages and disadvantages to that. The broker will require a commission. It's usually around 6%. They will also have documentation that they will require the board to consider and sign, and I would advise having legal counsel review that documentation. For example, I tell school districts not to complete a real estate condition report, and that there's no requirement to do that. Positives to listing with a broker are that the property will get widespread attention, hopefully, and it may generate competition. Generally, you'll get the word out more with listing it than you would with the other options that we have here. So that is one of the options. As I mentioned, you could do that for all of the properties, one of the properties. You could start with a different method and then move to this if the other methods don't work. The second method that I wanted to mention tonight and that some school districts use is to implement a request for proposal process. This is not something that's required. Competitive bidding is not required, but some school districts find success with having an RFP process. So what that would look like is we would publish a request for proposals, and I would assist the district with doing that. I have some examples I've used in other districts. And the RFP would invite interested parties to submit proposals to the district by a specific date. We would indicate what the board's desires are with the property. So if the board wants to see the property used for housing, for example, or for some other purpose, we could indicate that. Once the proposals are in, we would review those and determine whether there's any interest in any of them. We would reserve the right to reject the proposals if we wish, and the sale would, or the acceptance of a proposal would still be subject to negotiating the terms of the offer to purchase. And I would assist the board with either drafting the offer or reviewing the offer. If it's a sophisticated buyer, oftentimes they will either have their broker or their attorney draft the offer, and then we'd be in a position to review it. I've had school districts that have had success with an RFP process like this. I've also had school districts that got a couple of responses and they were not of interest, or the purchase price was just not anywhere near fair market value. So on that, generally you'll want to have an opinion of fair market value when you're using this option, so that you have the information available to determine whether any of the proposals are near what they should be as far as fair market value. And on that piece, Josh has already made headway with finding a consultant who will be able to provide an opinion on fair market value. And here, I wanted to note too that we want fair market value at the highest and best use, because you might have a property that is currently wooded or agricultural, and perhaps the highest and best use is to develop it as residential. So we would want to make sure we're getting the fair market value for the highest and best use of the property. So that is the second method, implementing a request for proposal process. The third method is to negotiate with one or more specific potential buyers who have expressed interest in the property. So here you're not listing with a broker, you're not doing an RFP, but instead you're kind of engaging in direct negotiations. Usually I see this where there's a neighbor who may have expressed interest, or maybe you have a municipality that has expressed interest, maybe a local nonprofit has expressed interest. So here it's perfectly acceptable to engage in negotiations without having listed it or without going through an RFP process. But again, you'll want to make sure that you have an understanding of what the fair market value is so that you can make a reasonable and well thought out decision with respect to that. The positives here are cost savings. You're not going to have the 6% broker fee. Downside, you may not generate competition with respect to the property, but you may not need to do that. If you have an interested buyer that is submitting an offer that is at fair market value, then that may not be a concern. I would assist the district again with either drafting the offer, or we could call it an offer to sell in that instance, or reviewing the offer if you get an offer that's drafted by maybe the buyer has a real estate professional, or perhaps the buyer has an attorney who is drafting the offer. But oftentimes you can see quite a bit of cost savings here if you decide to go in that direction. So those are the three methods. Before getting into questions, one other thing I wanted to note that Josh already has underway is when selling school district property, we often want to make sure before getting too far into it that the school district has clear title to the properties. Sometimes with can be usually older school district properties, there can be an issue with reversionary language, where if a school district property is no longer used for school purposes, it may revert back to the original owner. And sometimes we see that where property is donated. if it's a situation where a school district has purchased the property, or it is maybe a more recent transaction, less likely to see that reversionary language. But there could also be restrictive covenants and things like that we want to make sure we know about before we delve into the process of selling property. And so again, Josh already has that underway, working with Knightberry Title. That was through my recommendation. I've worked with Knightberry on many school district real estate transactions. And so we should have those results relatively soon to verify that the district has clear title to these properties. So with that, I can turn it over just to see if there's any questions regarding this general overview.
I just have one question about the Grant property. Since about 4 years ago, the city declared it a landmark, a historical landmark. Is that going to be some kind of anchor for us?
The Grant property, I'm sorry, I'm just scrolling to that. There could be additional barriers to that as far as changes. So if there is a potential buyer who wants to modify it in some way, there's likely going to be restrictions with respect to that. If they want to change it to housing, for example, they'll need to comply with the requirements that go along with that. So yes, there could be some barriers as a result of that, but I don't see it as being a reason why we couldn't sell.
Just a couple comments. First, the 6% fee that she mentioned is negotiable. So that's not hard and fast by any stretch of the imagination. And assuming that you can negotiate that down, we also have to consider attorney fees eating up what may now be a 4% or 5% fee, from a broker. And there were changes last year to real estate law that said that it no longer always has to fall on the buyer to pay that. On the seller to pay that 6% fee. So some of those can also be negotiated back to a buyer's agent as well. And I guess the last is that you can also, and it kind of goes to negotiating fees, you can also do I believe you can do a pseudo verbal RFP amongst brokers to say, hey, give us a proposal on what you would offer. What would you say you would do these, take these 3 properties or whatever it is, for a package deal, how much would you charge us? What services would you cover? Would you, cover part of title insurance or whatever it is, and see what kind of a deal we could get. And that way we can also maximize the visibility of the properties for sale. So just a few comments.
Any other questions or comments from board members? One comment I have, not really a question, it's a comment, is that I'd be real nervous without doing either the RFP process or the realtor process. I'd be nervous with just a direct negotiation because even if we got a fair market value report and we directly negotiated a sale for the fair market value, we wouldn't have anything to fall back on to say that we got the best. Somebody else could come later and say, I would have paid $50,000 more for that. You never gave me a chance. And at least if we have her listed with a realtor, or if we do an RFP process, everybody's given a chance. I guess I would lean more towards the realtor side. I'm a little worried that the RFP process would turn away some potential buyers that aren't used to doing that. I mean, it probably wouldn't turn away developers, but it might turn away some just sort of private people that might be interested in buying properties. All right. So on that note, we may want a different process for different properties. We may look at Grant and say, well, that's going to be a developer that's going to buy that, whereas Hewitt, Texas, maybe it wouldn't be. That could be a private purchaser that might want that. Anything, and what's the plans for next steps then, Kale? Because this wasn't listed for action tonight. This was just to get us thinking about some of our options.
Yeah, the plan is at our next board meeting we're going to see if we could do a closed session beforehand. Jenna had said that there's certainly strategy that goes along with selling each of the buildings, but that's probably done better in closed session than it is in open session. So we're trying to work with her calendar and what works for us to make the next session a closed one.
Do we need her involvement right away? I mean, can't we discuss a strategy as a board and then figure out what we want to do and engage the right people then, rather than continuing to pay?
I guess I would be nervous about not having some expert guiding us, at least in that first initial, even to what are the things that we need to think about as we sell that and what are the considerations. I just don't feel like I know enough about it to speak to it.
I just remember the last stuff we sold with Wimmer, we didn't have any. But, okay, whatever you guys think is best.
Okay, any other questions or comments for board members? If not, we'll address this probably at the next meeting then of the closed session. And I imagine we'll have a few closed sessions once we start getting into negotiations and that sort of thing. So we'll have a few closed sessions on this. Okay.
Thanks, Jenna.
Thanks, Jenna.
All right, thank you. Good night.
Good night. All right, then I am seeking a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you, everybody.